So now let's talk about the loops. So you can loop some certain code. So let's go over and create a loop. And for this one, we are going to talk about the for loop. So writing the for loop, and you can see here, there's something called for loop. So this one for each is actually for arrays, but we want to use the ones down here. So for loop, and this is the loop. So now we can loop some certain code, and this is the first index. So this is variables. Remember, variables always start at 0, and we can write, whoops, I double clicked it, we can write some other index. So for example 5. Now it's going to loop from 0 to the last index, which is 5. And here in the loop body, what do we want to loop? So this is what we want to loop. So for example, I want to say hello 6 times. Remember, we start at 0 and finish at 5, so this is 6 in total. So I want to say hello 6 times, and when I finish saying hello 6 times, when the loop is completed, I'm going to say this loop is done. I'm going to say this loop is done, and I'm going to choose another color. And now let's go ahead and compile and click play, and you're going to see I said hello 6 times, and then I said the loop is done. So this is how you use for loops. So this can be hard coded just like what we did. So you can write a certain number and compile and click play. Now we're going to say hello 26 times. And then after we say hello 26 times, we're going to say the loop is done. And this can be dangerous. Like, loops can be dangerous in code, because imagine you have a loop that is 10,000, and I'm going to try to click play and hope my computer is not going to blow smoke. And you can see here I click play and it's actually worked, but it took some time before it started playing. So if you have a very huge loop inside of your game, this can heavily affect performance, because you have to go through all of this loop before you can before it is completed. And if you're like, I have a very good computer right now, but if you have someone with a bad computer, he's going to lag, or maybe he's going to actually crash from the game. So you have to be careful for the loops, but they definitely need to be used. We use them a lot when we code games, but just be careful. Sometimes you are able to create infinite loops, and these will definitely crash your game. And if you want, you can also print the index here. So for example, you can connect this index, and you can see here the number of indices that are being printed. And what you can do, instead of hard coding here, you can actually plug in variables instead of using hard coding. And also another for loop, instead of only using the for loop, we have something called for loop with break. So what a for loop is, or for loop with break is, it looks like just like the for loop from before. We have the index, first index and last index we can set, and we also have the loop body. So what do you want to loop? For example, the print hello, and when it's completed, what do you want to do? But this time we have a break. So here you can see we have an extra execution pin. So let's talk about this break. So here in this example, let's loop something. So for example, we can do a format text for this one. So format text, I'm going to write it down here, format text. Okay, so we have a format text, and we can write some sort of a line. So we can write, this loop has been running, and we can write in the curly parentheses like we learned before, and doesn't matter what we write. Close the parentheses, and we can write times. Okay, so now we have the 0. We can actually put this index inside of this format text, and it's going to say this loop has been running, for example, 15 and then times. Okay, so now we have this format text, and we want to print it to the screen. We're going to print string, connect it, and now we're going to print it to the string. This is what we want to loop. Okay, and when it's completed, we are going to say the loop is complete. And let's try to compile and click play, and you can see, actually I want to make this longer so it's a lot easier for you to see. It disappears off the screen too quickly. You can see it says this loop has been running 5 times, from 0 to 5 times. Okay. And this break is we can actually break this loop in the middle of the loop. For example, if this loop has run too many times. So for example, let's say we have 1000. So if I compile and click save, you can see this loop has run for this amount of times. But what if we want to break it if it hits 20 or if it hits above 20 times? So we don't want to run it more than 20 times. So what we can do is actually use this break. So here we need an event. So let's create a custom event. And we'll learn about those. Just write custom and click on the custom event, call it something. We can call it break the loop, for example. And this custom event, we have to connect with the break. Okay, and remember, the events will not work if you not call them anywhere. So the computer doesn't really know when to run this. So if you click on play, nothing really happens because you never call this event. You never call it somewhere. And you have to call this event within the loop body, because if you click play and you are going to loop, you are going to finish this loop before you do anything else. So you have to call it within this loop if you want to break the loop. So here I'm going to say if this loop is looping greater than 20 times, is it looping more than 20 times? And if this is true, then we want to break. So call this event over here. What you can do is just write the name of it, break the loop. This is what we call the event. So if it is greater than 20, then break the loop. Else, if it is not greater than 20, just go ahead and keep printing out this message. Okay, so let's compile and click on play. And you can see here, now we're running the loop actually 21 times because we're also counting the 0. But now you can see we actually broke the loop and it says the loop is completed. So this is how you use a loop with break, while the for loop without the break is going to loop everything without any break. But remember, if you use the for loop with break, you have to call this event within the loop body. Let's go over to the next video and talk about the while loop.